What's up, everybody? Welcome to this week's episode. In today's episode, Raman and I do something really unique where, for those of you who are struggling with those big, long CFP questions, the ones that are complicated, the ones that require multiple steps, this week we break down one of those questions live on this video, as well as we're going to give you a structure to follow, as well as a couple of tips and tricks of what you can do after you get those difficult types of questions. So then you can take it forward to other difficult questions and use those lessons in the future. As always, we'd love for you guys to subscribe to our channel. We have a couple of really amazing offerings for you in the description here. We are offering our QBank that we use with our class with a 7-day free trial and a month-to-month package that will be available for the November exam. And as always, if you would like to chat with myself, you would like to chat with Raman about some of our offerings, please feel free to use the free assessment link right underneath this video. And we hope that you enjoyed today's episode.
All right, Joe. So what are we talking about today?
So I think this is one of the more interesting things that I've been talking to CFP candidates about. And I think we not only see this in class, you probably see this in one-on-ones. We see this in our office hours. I get one of these multi-step problems on the test or in practice, and it's really hard not to check out. Right? I see a whole
Yeah.
bunch of information. I don't, and I think everybody feels the same way, myself included. You get a problem that, and you're going to be like, I don't even know where to start.
Yeah.
So I think this is kind of one of the harder things for a lot of candidates to wrap their head around is where do I get started? So when you're, and we do this in class all the time, what are some of the typical things that you tell students when they get long problems, or sometimes not necessarily long, but maybe it requires 2 or 3 or 4 steps to actually get to your answer?
Yeah. Right when you look at this problem, you're just kind of like, oh my God, like I don't even know where to begin. Right. And the first thing I tell my students is just read through the problem and see what you could gather and try to identify what the question wants you to answer.
Hmm.
Right. Once you're able to at least get a better understanding of, okay, you know what, there's so many moving parts going on in this question, but what is the question, underlining question asking me about? That will
Hmm.
give you a base foundation of, okay, this is what I need to find. And then from there on, you would want to start working backwards and identifying the key facts about what the question has presented me with. Um, and you've seen some of these questions, right? Like they'll give you some irrelevant data too. It's kind of like when you while you're reading the question up front, like you just start reading the question, like okay, like it's telling me the rate of return and the inflation adjusted rate of return, and then the inflation is just kind of like, wait a second, like you're giving me all this information, but what is relevant?
I think that's a great starting point. And when I first started tutoring, I tutored SATs. And I created this little framework for students where I'd say, what is the question asking? What are my facts and figures? Solve.
Hmm.
Because I think the one thing we go in as CFP candidates and try to always do is that if there's information in a question, I have to use it.
Hmm.
You don't. Sometimes and the thing that everybody says, well, they're just throwing me off. Not really. There's extra information because sometimes, and I know this as a question writer, I'm going to use that same setup for 3 or 4 different questions inside of the same exam.
Right.
So, in one question, I might ask you about one thing. With the same set of information, I can ask you a second or a third or a fourth question. So, it just may not be relevant to this question, but you as a candidate have to be able to pull out the relevant information and not get lost in the sauce, right? Like,
You read my mind. You read my mind.
right. So, and what Raman and I are going to do today is actually put up one of these questions, and we're going to actually show you the way that we break this down and what we teach our students to do in terms of breaking this down, because it is very easy to get lost, and most importantly, it's easy to freeze.
Yeah.
All
Yep.
right, it
100%.
you're just staring at the question, going, uh.
Like, where do I even start? Like, what's going on here?
Right. So I think there's two things that people do, which is they freeze or they try to work it backwards into the answer instead of doing the most important thing, which is what you said. What is the question asking me? Because at least I put myself in a position to be able to answer a question if I actually know what it's asking me to do.
Yeah.
Okay. Now I
So,
know
but
what it
I was
asked me
gonna
to
say before
do.
we dive into this, Joe,
Yeah.
I we finally did it. I finally convinced you to attack a question.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. For those of you watching, I'm not keen on solving problems on YouTube,
Yeah.
but Raman has
Ramen
taught me.
twisted Joe's arm somehow. And then
Uh,
secondarily, people who are watching, by the way, the shirts that we're wearing, this was not planned. We
it
just
was planned. It was planned. And when I called
our
you
minds, our
yesterday,
bald minds are connected. That's what it is.
yeah, I just did this when I was on the phone with you yesterday. I'm like, wear something
Yeah. Very
flowery.
colorful and flower. I got a little bit of, is that flowers on your shirt too? Or
I believe it is. Yes, it
oh yeah,
is.
same. Yeah, I got like it's like flowers or like
But yours
leaves.
is much more nightclub than mine. Mine's Saturday afternoon chilling.
That is true. I mean, this is what you get when you
Mm.
buy something on on sale with Express.
You look like you're about to like get into your Cadillac Escalade and roll up
My
to Hollywood.
my Tahoe with 24-inch wheels.
So let's see. Shall we? Shall
Yes,
we solve
absolutely. Let's
it?
go. Yeah.
All right. All right. So on the screen here, we have a kind of a long one. So I would highly suggest pause the video, read it in total, and I'm going to read it out loud anyway. And then we're going to actually start getting into the problem. So let's start off by reading the question. It says, Michael and Sarah are a married couple, both age 63, planning to retire in 2025, but they're deciding to start Social Security immediately. Michael's PIA is 2,800 bucks a month. Sarah's is 22. They have tax exempt interest of $8,000 from municipal bonds in 2025. Their capital gains are $10,000 in long-term gains. Michael earns 2,500 bucks per month. Sarah took a lump sum distribution from her company profit sharing in 2025, funded entirely with employer stock. The employer's cost basis was 15, and the account was worth 78 at distribution. She transferred the stock in kind to a brokerage account. The life expectancy assumption was 25 years in retirement. The assumed portfolio return is 5% annually with a 3% CPI. And Michael was married to Linda for 14 years before divorcing 20 years ago. Linda is now 65 and has remarried. What amount of the Social Security benefits with Michael and Sarah receive annually in 2025?
Whew. Man, when I read that question the first time, and I was like, "Oh my God, there's a lot going on over
There's
here."
a lot going on. So for me, I'm looking at this and say, I'm going to break this down exactly like what you and I said. Well, what is the question asking me?
hmm
So if the question is asking me about the Social Security benefits that Michael and Sarah are going to use or they're going to receive in 2025, this is my starting point.
hmm
I have to make this the focal point of everything that I do throughout this question. Now that I know what the question is asking me, I'm going to pull out the relevant information. Robin, what should I be looking at here?
Yeah, since we know that the question is saying what amount of Social Security benefits will Michael and Sarah receive annually in 2025, I gotta know my PIAs. Well, first off, if I don't know what PIA is and how it's relevant to my question, I have to know how my Social Security benefits are calculated.
Excellent. So PIA, meaning your primary insurance amount, that's going to be the fundamental basis for all of your benefits at Social Security.
Right.
So I'm circling this. The other thing that I'm going to circle is their age.
Oh yeah, yeah, that's a good one. Yep, the age.
Okay. Their age, because I know when I'm talking about Social Security benefits, if you decide to start taking your Social Security benefits at 67, you're going to get the full amount. If you take it after 67, we're going to get an increase, and before 67, a decrease.
hmm
Okay. So that's important to me.
hmm
What else should I be looking for here?
Um, I would say the that Michael earns 2,500 bucks per month.
Okay, so we got 3 points of relevance here. That this is relevant, this is relevant, and this is relevant. And why is that relevant for everybody who doesn't know, Raman?
Because those three points that we're looking at is going to allow us to calculate how much Social Security benefits Michael and Sarah will receive.
Right. Okay, but specifically the 2,500 bucks.
Oh, okay, that. Well, because when you're working part-time and you start collecting Social Security, you have what we call benefits reduction.
Excellent. So we know that there's going to be some sort of reduction. And again,
Yep.
now this is the most important part of putting this all together when you're practicing. When you are learning Social Security, all of this stuff you can memorize and have in the bank. But now starting to put it all together, I know that there is a reduction of benefits for taking Social Security early. But when it's not presented in that way,
Right.
this is where a lot of us get thrown off. So now this is the application piece. So as you're going through and doing things like this is where your notes become really handy. And at the end of this question, I'm going to show you a little mind map that I would create to help me if I didn't get this question right, what I would do. So now I pulled my relevant facts and now it's time to actually solve. And I'm going to go in order. One, there's a reduction for age.
Mm-hmm.
That applies first. And then there's a reduction for income.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, if they're 63, their NRA for most people is going to be 67. That means it's 1, 2, 3, 4 years early.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you could sit there and we can do the long version of this math, which is 5/9 of 1% for the first 36 months and 5/12 of 1% for the remainder. I also happen to know off the top of my head for years 1 through 3, that is not a three. For years 1 through 3, it's a 6.67% per year. And for years 4 and 5, it's 5% per year.
Mm-hmm.
So I know that I'm going to take this, multiply by 3, and add 5. That's a 25% reduction. Okay. That is a permanent reduction. And that's why we do it first, where the reductions for income will vary from year to year depending on this. So this is always why we do this first, because it is a permanent reduction. Okay. So now I'm going to take my 2,800 times 2,200, or not times,
Plus
but
plus
plus
20. We all know what you meant. We all know what you meant.
times 12 means that their NRA benefit is $60,000. They're going to have a reduction of 25%. Okay, so 25% of that is 15,000. So right now we're at $45,000.
Yep.
Okay. Now, second part, the reduction for income. We know that the rule is you can earn up to $23,400 married filing jointly in the calendar year 2025 before you get a reduction for income.
Mm-hmm.
$2,500 per month times 12 months is 30,000. 30,000 minus the 23,400 is going to give us 30,000 minus 23,400 is going to give us $6,600. And then we know that there's a reduction of $1 for every two. So we're simply going to divide it by 2, which gives us a $3,300 reduction. So minus our income reduction, 3,300, leads us to 41,700, which is answer D.
And it's crazy, Joe, where a lot of people will, assuming they know majority of this information, and they'll start answering, they'll stop at step one. They'll say,
Correct.
"Oh, the benefits are reduced," and they might just even they'll stop it for whatever reason. It could be, "Oh, I see 45,000 as an answer choice. Let's just go with that." Or they don't even
Correct.
think about the part-time income that's listed in there.
Yeah. So again, this is really, you bring up a really good point. And I was just going to say this, for what you said is that if I see what are they going to receive annually, I can start to chop this up. If I'm not going through this carefully and pulling out all the relevant information, I'm going to miss that. And, again, CFP, the question writers for CFP know what students do. You and I know how students typically process this. I can back into any one of these answers,
Hmm.
i.e., if I made the mistake of going 63 is a 20% reduction, I can choose B. I can back myself into any one of these answers. As you said, Raman, this is with the 20% reduction. This is with the 25% reduction. And good, there's a place to stop. If I'm really being sloppy, I'm just doing the $5,000 of benefits by 12. And that's why it's really dangerous for you on these problems to just back into an answer because every answer is there.
Yeah.
It is written on purpose like that.
And the CFP loves doing that, right? They're gonna write down all the answer choices, and they're not just randomized numbers or randomized info. It's somewhat relevant, but they'll slightly change the answer choice, and you're like, oh, wait a second, like that sounds like a correct answer. Well, it's
Correct.
not because because they want you to figure out the multi-step process of the question to get to the right answer.
Correct. This is about problem solving. This is about your clients coming to you, giving you a lot of information. And now you not only have to ask the right questions, but then you have to actually apply what you've learned here properly. Because people are going to, this is not an unusual situation where we have clients who've done okay in their lives. They're deciding that's it. We no longer want to work. We've built up some investment assets. We're happy to live on a majority of our Social Security income. I have a little bit of pension. I have a little bit of this. I have a little bit of that. And I'm going to work part time just to supplement. Right.
Yeah.
I have friends of mine from high school that I stay in touch with, and I've known her and her family for probably since I was 16 years old, and I still talk to her parents quite a bit. And her dad was also my weightlifting coach, and this is literally a conversation that we had not that long ago of, okay, if I work part time and if she works part time, but we want to travel to Italy, we want to be there for 2 months out of the year, and we want to spend, winters in Italy, we want to spend, the rest of the year with our kids in New Jersey. This is a very common situation,
Hmm.
right? So this is not, and this is what I really like about what CFP has done, is that they're doing it. But again, it's very easy to fall into the wrong answer choice and walk away going, "Oh, I did that right,"
Yeah.
because my answer coincides with this.
Yeah. I see it.
Okay,
It's there.
100%. Now, a couple things that you can take away from this type of a question. When you get a question like this, it's really easy to just go, this is a hard question. I'm going to shrug it off. I won't see anything like this again. It's really hard. You're right. It is hard. However, not seeing anything like it again is an insane thing to say.
Hmm.
So when you're getting questions like this, and something that I started training myself to do when I was taking CFA was I would start to build a page in my notes on Social Security. And what I would do is I would make something like this. I would make a timeline, at 67, at 62, and at 70. And then I would kind of start making notes. Here's a little map for myself. This is going to be reduced if taken early plus reduced for income. That way, if I get a question like this and I come back and I'm just looking at my notes, it's triggering to me, oh, yo, you got to remember that this is actually reduced. And you can
Right.
draw down in a couple of different ways. Me personally, what I would do is I would draw like something on the side here, like early, and then I would go 30% and then 25%, and
Mm.
64 would be 20%, and 65 would be 13.33, 6.67, 100%. I would make myself a little timeline that looks something like this. And then I would put for income, I would do 23 for 2 for 1. And that applies all the way up to here, where then it gets reduced 3 for 1.
Mhm.
Then I would do plus 8, plus 16 plus 24 at the 68, 69. Again, nothing sophisticated, but a good reminder for myself and something that I can come back and keep adding to as I get more and more detail. But now what I've done is created an actionable notes,
Yeah. And
which
I
is
like
something
this. I like this, Joe, because the more I would write this down, I'll just start memorizing these percentages and these numbers.
correct.
And it's about like practicing this, right? Like, I mean, if I know I can just quickly draw this chart down rather than having to read through. I mean, this what you just wrote down in form of a small little chart. I'd say that's like a page on Social Security.
Right.
You know?
Exactly right. And here's the thing. These are the types of things that you take in with you to the exam. Where when I do get a question like this and I am seeing multiple things, I'm writing out my little chart and then I can actually execute it,
Right.
which
Uh,
I think is
I really
pretty
like that
decent.
chart. I really like that chart. I think that's something. I think we've talked to our students about this in our class too. Chart, if I'm not wrong, a couple of times.
Yep. I'm a big chart person.
Yeah,
Like I draw.
yes, Joe Nissim is a big chart per. I mean, anytime you see a question coming up to Joe, it's gonna turn into a chart or some sort of visual aid, which is amazing because I mean, I've had students say like, "Wow, like I didn't look at it from this perspective before." It's kind of like, well, yeah,
Yeah. And then it's just gets it allows your head to organize information, because again, a lot of this is randomly floating in your head. And for me, it's helped me personally. And it was something that, I've saw other teachers doing in elementary school and high school, that they would start doing it. And so you kind of now start using these very, very simple tools. And that's what questions like this require, are your simple tools. When you get into like a time value of money that requires multiple step, use your charts. Use these little maps that you've drawn for yourselves. When I was teaching CFA, we would do this a lot where we call them logic chains, which, they would ask a question about if something happened in operating income of a business, how that affects net income and taxes. And then somebody would have to work their way through all of the steps of the income statement. For us, it's the same exact idea that we're asking you something that is one or two steps away from the information that you're given, and you have to do that problem solving.
right,
So these are the types of little tools that are really, really helpful on the exam that make things very easy. And if you don't have these tools, you have to start putting them in your chest. You have to start building your tool chest, because if you're walking in just going, my practice questions are going to carry me, you're in for a rude awakening, because I'm going to change the wording
yeah,
and I'm going to really make sure that you understand it. And if you can't draw it out like that and you're constantly backing into answers, the exam will punish you.
yeah.
It will make it for a very long day.
Yeah, okay. So Joe, would you say the obviously this is a Social Security question, and for our audience, would you say the process that you just shared with us about like creating one, two, three steps, identifying the question, would you say I could use that process on any given multi-step question on the CFP exam?
For sure. I mean, there's a lot of things out there that are layered. Social Security is layered. Medicare is layered. There's a lot of stuff in investment planning when you're making actual recommendations, and that is layered. These are the types of things that you want to be using charts or just writing. One thing that I've seen as of late that has kind of shocked me is the number of students coming to class without a pen and paper. And yes, I know we live in a paperless society now, but when you're studying, get your ass a pen and paper.
Yeah,
Like, you should have yellow notepads that you're writing things out, because that's how we process.
yeah,
You're not going to process just by looking at something. You need to write it down and you need to get connected to the material. And if you can't regurgitate some of it, or you don't have a way to do that, and you're just kind of depending on what's in your head, it's never going to work.
right,
All right. Like, if somebody's like, if I ask you, Raman, I'm like, what are the directions? You're like, I have them in my head. I'm like, cool. Can you write them down? You're like, no. I'm like, okay, then you don't know them.
right.
Because if they're so good in your head, then you should be able to just
Just
write
write it
it down
down.
for me.
Yeah,
Draw a little picture for me of, and, you're of the age where you remember life pre Google Maps and MapQuest and all that stuff, where you would get directions from a friend and they would like draw you a little picture, or they'd be like, when you see the big elm tree, make a right. You can't miss it, right? And like I remember like listening to my dad give, you know, directions as a kid, and he'd be like, okay, when you come off the highway, you're gonna count. You're gonna go through one traffic light. There's an Exxon gas station on your left. You're gonna pass the elementary school. It's called Harrison School. You can't miss it. We're going to be the first right. You're going to see a big tree. You're going to make a right. And then you're going to take, and I would remember him do this over and over again to the point where you can actually start seeing it in your head. But I could draw it, I could see it, I can do all that.
Right.
I can problem solve my way through any version of that. That's what you need to take into this test.
100%, 100%. Well, Joe, thank you for walking through this multi-step problem. I hope the audience at least gets an understanding of the approach that they need to have when it comes to answering these questions, these long multi-step questions. Because I know that's a very frustrating part of the CFP exam. A lot of people, they run out of gas when they see a question like this. And the thing is, you don't have to, right? You just need to have a good process in place.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, everybody. We will see you on our next episode. Take it easy.